Berlin, April 1945. The city groaned like a wounded giant. Its streets cracked, buildings hollowed, and the air thick with smoke that tasted like metal and sorrow. Every rooftop seemed to whisper the same truth. The end had finally arrived. Yet, high above this dying city, dozens of American paratroopers floated silently through the night, ghosts, descending into the ruins of a once unstoppable empire. Among them was Private Ethan Hale, a 21-year-old from Ohio who had never imagined the world could grow this dark. The wind tugged at his parachute as the ground drew closer, revealing Berlin's shattered skyline, church spires broken, factories burned out, and the river glimmering with the reflection of distant fires. Ethan felt his chest tighten. It wasn't fear. It was something deeper, a realization that history itself was beneath him, collapsing. The jumpmaster's last words echoed in his mind. No heroics. No mistakes. Berlin is desperate. Ethan hit the ground hard, rolling between fragments of a collapsed tram line. The night was silent for a moment, eerily silent, until distant artillery trembled through the bones of the earth. He rose, adjusting his rifle, letting the cold wind bite his face awake. Around him, other paratroopers landed, their silhouettes merging with the shadows of ruined buildings. A whisper of footsteps approached. "Over here," Sergeant Mason hissed, beckoning the squad toward the cover of a gutted storefront. His voice carried a weight none of them had heard before. "The Germans know we're here, and they're not planning to surrender this city gently." Ethan looked at his comrades, faces smeared with dust, eyes reflecting firelight. For a heartbeat, the war felt too big, too heavy. But there was no turning back. They had landed in the last chapter of a dying war. The squad moved like shadows slipping through the broken skeleton of Berlin. Windows without glass stared back at them like empty eyes, and every alley felt like it carried the breath of something waiting, watching. The moonlight struggled to reach the ground, blocked by smoke drifting from fires that had been burning for days. Ethan kept close to Sergeant Mason, his boots crunching over shattered brick and fallen plaster. Each sound felt dangerously loud. In the distance, a machine gun sputtered, then choked into silence. Somewhere else, a woman's cry rose and vanished in the wind. Berlin wasn't just a battlefield, it was a graveyard in motion. "Eyes up," Mason whispered. "Snipers have been hitting our guys all night." Ethan swallowed hard. His heartbeat thudded in his ears as they reached a crossroads littered with debris. A bombed-out trolley lay on its side like a dead animal, rusted wheels still faintly glowing from the fires around it. Corporal Davis crouched beside a crumbling doorway, signaling with 2 fingers. "Movement. Second floor, right window." The squad froze. Ethan raised his rifle, breath steady, finger brushing the trigger. The window remained still, until a faint glimmer flickered behind it. "Contact," Mason breathed. A crack split the silence, a sniper's shot slicing the air. Chips of stone exploded inches from Ethan's face. Instinct drove him behind cover as the squad returned fire in controlled bursts. The ruined street roared to life, dust raining down like ash. Davis lobbed a grenade into the building. The explosion thumped through the ground, sending smoke curling from shattered brick. A quiet thud followed inside. "Clear," Mason said, though his voice held no victory, just exhaustion. Ethan exhaled shakily. He realized then that this city would not give up easily. Every block would be earned. Every step would be a fight. And they were only just beginning. The deeper they pushed into Berlin, the more the city felt alive, breathing through cracks, groaning through shattered metal, whispering through drifting smoke. Ethan's boots sank into dust so thick it looked like gray snow. Fires burned in hollowed buildings, their orange glow flickering like dying hearts. A distant explosion trembled across the skyline. Mason raised his fist and the squad halted. Crouched behind the remains of a stone fountain cracked clean in half. "Patrol ahead," Davis murmured, peering through the broken lion statue. Ethan steadied his rifle and peeked. 3 German soldiers, thin, exhausted, barely more than boys, moved cautiously down the street. Their uniforms were torn, their helmets dented, faces pale from hunger and fear. They didn't march like soldiers anymore. They shuffled like ghosts. "Do we engage?" Davis whispered. Mason didn't answer immediately. The moment stretched, heavy and complicated. Finally, he shook his head. "Let 'em go. They're done fighting." Ethan watched them disappear into the fog, feeling a knot tighten in his chest. He had expected Berlin to be filled with hard, unyielding enemies. Instead, he found humans, broken by a war that had asked too much from everyone. They moved again, stepping through a collapsed archway into a courtyard littered with burned papers, drifting like leaves. Ethan picked one up. It was a child's drawing, stick figures under a sun that no longer existed. A sharp metallic click snapped the silence. "Mine!" Davis hissed. Ethan froze mid-step, breath slicing short. A small circular pressure plate peeked from the rubble beneath Davis's boot. "Don't move," Mason ordered softly. The squad fanned out, tension coiling around them like wire. Ethan's hands trembled as he knelt, slowly clearing debris around the buried mine, heart pounding at every grain that shifted. A long minute passed. Then, "Got it," Ethan whispered, lifting the pressure arm free. Davis exhaled shakily. "Kid, you just saved my life." But Ethan wasn't relieved. He stared at the mine and realized Berlin had more traps, human and hidden, than any map could show. The squad entered a narrow street where the wind howled, between buildings like a wounded animal. Shattered balconies hung by threads of twisted metal, and the cobblestones were smeared with soot and something darker. Ethan felt the weight of Berlin pressing inward, as if the city itself resented their presence. A collapsed tram blocked part of the road, forcing them to move single file along the left side. Mason raised his hand. "Check that building," he ordered, pointing to a 3-story apartment block whose windows stared like hollow sockets. Davis pushed the door open with his rifle. Hinges groaned, a long, tired sound that echoed through the stairwell. They stepped inside, boots sinking into dust layered so thick it seemed untouched for years. Ethan's flashlight beam swept across the hallway. Abandoned shoes, a broken teacup, portraits on the wall, glass cracked but faces still smiling from a time that felt impossible now. "Clear the rooms," Mason whispered. The first door opened into a kitchen frozen in time. Pots still sat on the stove, food long turned to ash. A child's toy car lay overturned on the counter. The silence felt alive. Ethan moved to the next room. That's when he heard it. A faint scraping, like fabric dragging across the floor. He motioned to Mason. They approached carefully. Ethan nudged the door with his boot. It swung inward, revealing a living room lit only by the glow of distant fires seeping through the window. In the corner, behind an overturned sofa, something shifted. "Come out," Mason called firmly but not harshly. "Hands where we can see them." A small figure slowly rose. A little girl, no older than 7, her dress torn, face streaked with soot, eyes wide with terror. Ethan's breath caught. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't a threat. She was just a child trapped in the ruins of a world she didn't create. Mason lowered his rifle immediately. "Easy, it's okay." But before they could take another step, the building shuddered as distant artillery thundered again, showering dust from the ceiling. Berlin was still tearing itself apart. Dust drifted from the ceiling as the artillery rumble faded into the distance. Ethan instinctively shielded the little girl with his body, his heart hammering from the sudden blast. She trembled violently, clutching a small cloth doll so worn it was barely more than threads. "It's all right," Ethan whispered, kneeling to her level. "You're safe. We won't hurt you." Mason scanned the room, jaw tight. "We can't stay here. More shells could land any minute." The girl didn't speak. Her lips quivered, eyes darting between the soldiers. Ethan offered his canteen. She hesitated before taking a sip, tiny hands shaking. "What's your name?" Davis asked gently. She didn't answer. Instead, she pointed toward the hallway. Ethan frowned. "Someone else here?" Her eyes filled with tears as she nodded. Mason signaled the squad. "Move, carefully." They followed the girl's trembling gesture to a door partially blocked by rubble. Together, Ethan and Davis pushed the debris aside until the door creaked open. The smell of damp earth and dust washed over them. Inside the small bedroom, 2 bodies lay on the floor. An elderly couple, covered by a blanket the little girl must have placed over them. Ethan lowered his head, understanding without needing words. "They didn't make it," Davis whispered. The girl's soft sob broke into the silence, fragile and heartbreaking. Ethan knelt beside her, unsure how to comfort her in a world where comfort had become a luxury. Mason exhaled slowly. "We take her with us." "She doesn't stay here." Ethan lifted the girl gently, and she clung to him like he was the last solid thing left in the collapsing city. Her tiny heartbeat pressed against the cold metal of his gear. As they stepped back into the hallway, another explosion shook the streets outside. The war didn't pause for innocence. But Ethan made a silent promise. As long as she was in his arms, Berlin would not take her too. The squad moved back into the open street. Ethan carrying the little girl pressed against his chest. Her small fingers clung to his uniform as if afraid the world might swallow her if she let go. The fires of Berlin flickered in her eyes, reflections of a city collapsing faster than dawn could rise. Mason checked his map under the dim glow of a burning storefront. "There's an Allied forward aid post 3 blocks east," he said. "If we can get her there, she'll be safe." "But 3 blocks in this mess?" Davis muttered, glancing around. "Might as well be 3 miles. A distant scream of incoming shells cut the air. "Move!" Mason shouted. They dashed between ruined buildings as explosions tore into the streets behind them, sending fountains of debris skyward. Ethan shielded the girl with his body, feeling shards of stone slice the air inches from his head. The ground shook beneath each blast. Berlin groaning, breaking, dying. They reached a narrow alley where the noise momentarily softened. Ethan set the girl down carefully. "Almost there, sweetheart," he whispered. She nodded, brave despite her tears. Then footsteps. Mason raised his fist. Everyone froze. 3 German soldiers emerged from the smoke, weapons trembling, not aimed, just held. Their faces were hollow, uniforms filthy, eyes defeated. One of them, barely older than Ethan, stared at the girl and lowered his rifle completely. "No more," he said in broken English. His voice cracked. "The war is finished." For a moment, the war stopped. Not because of orders, but because everyone was simply too exhausted to continue breaking what little remained. Mason gestured for them to pass. The Germans nodded gratefully and vanished into the rubble. Ethan lifted the girl again as they resumed their path toward the Allied lines. The sky above Berlin glowed with fire, but somewhere beyond the smoke, dawn waited. And as they stepped closer to safety, Ethan realized something profound.